Welcome to A Pair of Bookends, the book club you can carry anywhere. We are your hosts and hopefully your new bookish pals. I'm Hannah MacDonald.
And I'm Lydia Clare. Welcome back, Bookends, new and old, to our first book club pick of 2024. We are delighted to share that we are featuring The Knowing, the debut novel by friend of the podcast, Emma Hinds. Inspired by real historical characters, this bewitching Gothic tale centres on an abused tattoo artist model in 19th century New York and Manchester, and her unique and strange gift of summoning the dead.
Emma Hinds is a queer writer from Manchester. Emma has an MA in creative writing from the University of St Andrews and received mentorship from the late Oliver Emanuel. In 2021, Emma was the recipient of the Artist Development Grant at Hope Mill Theatre, where her latest play, Pure, was performed as part of Turn On Fest. In 2022, her non-fiction book, Ineffable Love, exploring Christian themes in Good Omens, was published by Darton, Longman and Todd. And her debut novel, The Knowing, is out on the 18th of Jan and published by Bedford Square. And for the first time ever, we had to have a returning guest. Emma Hinds, welcome to A Pair of Bookends. Welcome back.
It's so good to be back. I'm back. We're back. It's amazing.
We're back. I'm really annoyed at myself for not re-listening to the Pride special that you came on for, because I wanted to know what exactly we said about The Knowing, because we must have touched on the fact that you were writing something.
I don't remember. What I remember most about that episode, aside from like the Pride stuff, was that we recorded it on probably the hottest day of the year.
Yes.
In a black box of a flat.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was the hottest. All you can hear in the background is the clinking of ice in glasses.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So
we all sound like we're on a beach somewhere, you know,
yeah.
drinking
We couldn't have the
coconut
fan
drinks.
on. Billy wouldn't let us have the fan on.
No,
Awful.
it was bad for the sound.
Awful.
Terrible.
Awful. But we are now the opposite of that. We are now freezing.
Yeah.
We are freezing.
Yeah.
Yes.
We've gone completely to the other end of the spectrum and we're now all absolutely freezing. I'm in a scarf and I have a hot chocolate.
That's
We're in that
tea
territory,
here.
right?
blanket on that. Yeah.
Blanket on lap. But this
Yeah.
is where we're at. So now that we're comfortable and hopefully getting a bit warmer, can we pick your brains, Emma, and ask you what you are currently reading?
Yes, I am about a third of the way through Boy Parts by Eliza Clark, which I am really enjoying, loving it so far. But yeah, only a third of the way through, so stay tuned.
I am absolutely livid that I did not get to see the adaptation of it at Soho Theatre.
I didn't know they'd done adapted.
Yeah.
I didn't know
That's
they'd
so
done an
cool.
adaptation.
Yeah, the Geordie actor Amy Kelly, I think her name is, performed in it, and Eliza Clark was also part of the adapting side of things, which is always good
That's
when
great.
they're in the adaptation as well, involved in that. And it looked great, and I'm really sad that I didn't. The amount of times I looked and was like, should I just buy a ticket? Can I really just pay for a train to London? No, I could not.
The train prices are astronomical at the moment.
But I am using the powers of manifesting that I do not have, hoping that that the Boy Parts will be transferred to Manchester.
Yes,
So
let's all manifest it
go
together.
Manifest that situation. Thank you.
Yeah.
I am gonna put a spanner in the works, and I, as most of our listeners will know, we have not had Lydia for a couple of episodes, and I've not got to chat to Lydia about books for a long time, aside from several WhatsApp messages, but that doesn't count because you didn't hear it.
Doesn't count.
So Lydia, what are you currently reading?
Oh, I'm currently reading a book called The Wager by David Grann.
Is this the author of Killers of the Flower Moon?
It is indeed, yes.
Ah, that sounds good.
And it's cracking. It's kind of making me feel like I can definitely sail a ship, which I think is maybe not completely true. But honestly, I mean, I do like a bit of non-fiction every now and again, but this is very much historical non-fiction, kind of out of my usual wheelhouse. And it's really good. Like the people that he's talking about, that kind of were involved on the Wager, that this incredible ship. are just such interesting people, such interesting characters, that it reads like fiction. So it's really, honestly, if you're not really sure about like going into kind of, you know, historical non-fiction, but you're kind of into that kind of stuff, it's definitely worth a read. It's really good. Yeah.
How did you hear about this?
It's Waterstone's non-fiction book of the month.
Huh.
I love Hannah's like, how did you hear about this? Because
Yeah.
I've not heard
Because
about
I've not
this.
heard of
And
it.
it sort of feels like the kind of thing I should have heard about.
We
So
haven't discussed this. I need to know.
how dare you recommend a book we have not previously discussed?
I'm not allowed.
I have to know every single book that Lydia has purchased.
Yeah.
If I see a book on her Bookstagram that I do not recognise, I'm like, when did you buy that?
You're like a jealous boyfriend.
Literally.
Who are you
When-
getting that for then?
When did you buy that?
I get text messages, immediately get text messages. Like, I started a Vinted account and put a book up that Hannah was like, excuse me, I gave you that book, you better have read it. And I was like, hang on. I was like, no, I just got an extra copy. I'm just selling the extra copy. But she was on it within, like, I'd literally just pressed post and she was like,
Oh my goodness.
bitch, what you doing?
I need to know where said book was purchased from. I need to know, like, you know, is it Waterstones? Is it a charity shop? How much was it? Important.
True.
I am not going to reveal what I am reading at the moment because it's a podcast read, but I will say that a book that is on my TBR pile that I want to read this month is Good Material by Dolly Alderton, which will come as a surprise to absolutely nobody. Thank you. So Emma Hinds, I'm having so much fun saying your full name.
It's weird. It's weird, babes. It's weird. It's dead weird.
Well, I'm seeing your name everywhere. It's, you know, exciting. So usually on our debut spotlight series, which is not what this is, we ask debut authors what their journey has been like into having their debut novel published. And we are very privileged because we've got to see your journey in much greater detail than we've seen any of the other debut authors we've spoken about, but I'm sure our listeners would love to hear what the journey has been like for you.
Oh, what's the journey been like? My goodness. I say it's like climbing a mountain, and you keep thinking, like, if I just get to this point, then I'll know that I've done it. And then you get to the point and then you look up and there's already like, there's so much more mountain to go. And you get to another point and then you keep going like that. And then eventually you turn around and you're like, holy crap, I climbed a mountain. It's been so many ups and downs. Like Hannah will know. They've seen the ups and downs firsthand. Yeah, it's a real, I would say, like, to anyone who is like in the process, whatever stage you find yourself at, is just like focus on the next thing. I would say that is the best way to do it. So if you're in the process where you're like, I'm writing my manuscript and I just don't know why I should keep going and I don't know how I'm going to keep going, I would just say, like, keep going and get to the point where you finished it. And then when you finished it, like, try it for a few competitions, try and get out there, get some feedback on it, you know, find somebody you trust who's also writing and get some feedback from them, get some good feedback, and then try and do some agents and see how that goes. And then once you've got an agent, you're kind of in a system which is pushing you forward without you. It's helping you on the tracks, and that can be really, really a big encouragement. But then I would say, if you're in that situation where you've got an agent and you're still just waiting for that first bite, is just to keep writing, because the knowing was out, you know, around with different publishers and different publishing houses for a while, for the better part of a year before it got picked up. And I was at the point where I'd started writing other stuff and started to think, oh, you know what, it's probably just going to be one of those where I put it in a drawer, and maybe my first debut is something that's actually like my second or third book, and maybe I come back to it years down the line. So yeah, it can be a disheartening process, but the important thing is just keep focusing on the next thing, I guess.
I remember we had conversations when you were getting rejections, and I was saying that, like, oh, you know, I've read about this debut author and they've said that their debut novel wasn't their debut novel, it was their second book. And, you know, I was trying to think of like every way to help you keep going, because I could feel like, and like, you know, we get it, like we're we're actors, like we understand the rejections that you face as a creative. You've seen firsthand how debilitating that can be sometimes, and you know it for yourself. But trying, like, it's so difficult when you can see somebody so talented and you know how talented they are, and you can see that it's starting to really grind them down, and you're like, no. I know you will make it.
Yeah, I think that's something that like that we've been to each other, but also like the other people have been to me, and other people have probably been to the two of you. Is like, community is so important when you're a creative. Like, you need people around you who, when you've kind of like lost sight of what you're doing, that they're going to be the people who just kind of go, no, I actually believe that you're good. Because you stop, when you face a lot of rejection, you do get to that point where you start going, maybe I'm just not good at this. You know, at what point can I do I have to call myself just a person with a hobby rather than a person doing this? And that's when you like need people in your life who are going to go, I believe in you, and I believe that you can kind of get up the mountain, basically. And yeah, I think that's really, really valuable for anybody who's on the journey. And I'm really lucky because, you know, I have a partner who's great and sat me down in a coffee shop, which was probably like the year before I got my agent, Alice Saunders. And I'd finished my book, and I'd been doing competitions for a while, and nothing had kind of was taking to the next level. And I knew the next level was to get an agent, and I'd been putting it out everywhere, and I'd been getting a lot of rejections. And I was sitting there and in this coffee shop and just thinking, like, I just don't know if I've still got it in me to keep going. And he was just like, it's coming. You've just got to keep going. And I'm like, well, it's easy for you to say. You don't actually know that it's coming, do you? You don't know. But actually what he was offering me in that situation wasn't certainty, it was hope, you know. And that's what I needed, and that's what you need, is people who are going to be giving you the hope and stuff. And I'm so lucky now, because like I started off with like John and Hannah, and now I have like my agent and my publishers and a whole group of people who are around me going like, we believe in you. And that's so incredible. But yeah, having those initial people like who you really trust and really, really love to push you on is so valid and so important.
And thank goodness that you did continue, because we are so excited that you've got this far, and we get
crazy
to share it with everybody. Although quite selfishly, I'm really happy that I got to read it quite early. So like, I know what happened.
I know the ending. You guys don't know yet.
But it is such a brilliant book, and honestly, Hannah's so proud of you, but we are so proud of you. It is just an incredible piece of work. It really is.
Thank you.
It really
You're gonna make me cry.
Is.
I'm like got a cold and everything, so like if I might actually cry, like it's possible, you know. It's a good thing I've got tissues here.
Yeah,
this is a safe space.
Safe space. I'm so happy that everybody liked my book.
All I will say as a kind of caveat to that is that, yes, I'm going to go with that word, is that I do slightly feel sorry for anybody that is yet to read your writing, in the sense that you are the most savage person I know.
Oh my God. Okay, but for context, the reason Hannah says this is that I wrote a play in 2018 about a little village in rural Derbyshire that had something very terrible happen. This was pre-COVID. It was the pandemic play. It was about the plague of like the 1600s. And Hannah had a lovely little character called Leah who falls in love and has a sad, like, has a sick mother and has this gorgeous little storyline. And then Hannah got really mad because I killed her character.
Not only did my character get the plague, but she was stoned to death in the streets.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
Nice. Yeah.
It's like not just dead, but really dead.
And that is all you need to know about Emma Hinds.
That I will you love a character, and then I will stone them to death.
Yes. That is, So when people are creating these TikToks and Instagram reels, saying how savage you are as an author, I will be like, Emma, I told you.
Yeah.
I told you
Yeah.
this whole
I
time.
believe you. I've
you.
always believed you, Hannah.
Thank you. Thank you. Very good.
Now,
Still-
can we move on to the book
Yes,
now?
we can.
Or
We can.
is that okay, Hannah? Are you all right?
She
You've got
will,
it off
because
your
she
chest?
will talk about it for 90 minutes, how she was
I'm
wrong.
looking at
Yes.
the time and I'm like, if she gets on this rant,
Game
me and Emma
over.
won't get word in edgeways.
Game over. Yeah. Yeah.
So let's move on while we can, while Hannah's taking a breath. So the book is fantastic and we both truly loved it, and it was one of those things where, especially with me, I was terrified I wouldn't like it because I was so scared, not of you, Emma, but of Hannah's reaction to if I said to her, I'm not really sure this one's for me. I thought I would be the one being stoned to death. But actually, I have had to do no such thing, and it is incredible and unputdownable. So well done.
Oh, great word. Love that.
Let's
Let's put that on Instagram. Love
all right.
that.
Okay. Don't forget, quote me. But the book is set between inner city New York and the rainy streets of Manchester, which are just fantastically described in the 19th century. So there are quite a few similarities between the two places, and then there's some quite striking differences. But can you tell us a little bit more about why you chose those two places as the setting for the novel?
Yeah, the big reason is because I knew I wanted to write about Victorian freak shows and Victorian sideshow culture. And I knew I wanted to write about it on both sides of the Atlantic. And the biggest reason to kind of go for New York is because of P.T. Barnum and his kind of circus that was there, and because of the culture in New York around sideshows and how important they were there. And then I could have chosen London, but I live in Manchester. I wanted to write about Manchester. I wanted to write about the Industrial Revolution and what that did to the city, and what it was like to live there at that time. So those are the two places that I chose because of that. Yeah.
Honestly, when you describe Flora, the main character, walking down the streets, especially in Manchester, it's literally like, and I grew up partly in Manchester. The way you describe it is so well done, because you feel like you are walking over those cobbles and you are feeling that kind of like slightly grimy, slightly wet walls and all of this, like everything that you described was just so brilliant. And I think that it's really hard to do, to capture the kind of essence of a place, because especially with the fact that it's set so long ago, it could feel quite distant, but it feels so present. It's really difficult to do. What kind of research went into that? Was it just, you live there,
Yeah.
so it's easy? But
well, part of the fun of living in Manchester is that, like, because the city was built up in the Victorian era and in the Industrial Revolution between like the 1700s and the 1800s, like you can walk around the city and be treading in the places that my characters would have walked. Like the canals are all the same and things like that. So that's really nice to be able to walk through the city and be able to carve through historical pathways. And there's so much local history that's available in the city. So the Manchester Central Reference Library has like an amazing exhibition on what local Manchester was like during the Industrial Revolution, which is really helpful. The People's History Museum in Manchester is also exceptional with the amount of sources and materials that they have. And in the Central Reference Library in Manchester, they have a really good local history collection that features history from local historians and local writers. So it's a great place to write about, and it's a great place to live, and it's a great place to write about living a long time ago, because they've kept so many of the resources and the materials. So whilst there was, yes, a lot of research that went into it, it wasn't inaccessible research. It was all there available for me to use, which was just wonderful.
Now, looking further into the settings, I want to speak about the tattoo parlor, which we found ourselves in at the very start of the novel. And this tattoo parlor is owned by Jordan, who is Flora's, don't really want to say lover, captor, not a great person, but he owns said tattoo parlor. And
I like to call him the problematic Victorian boyfriend.
Yes, toxic.
Nice.
Toxic Victorian boyfriend.
Yes, that's the one. And I know also with Flora being tattooed from pretty much from head to toe, there is a specific inspiration that you had for Flora. So I wanted to hear you speak a bit more about what the tattoos and the tattoo parlor kind of represent to you.
Well, I was looking, I wanted to write about freak shows and I wanted to write about sideshows and that kind of performance element. So when I started to look into old photographs of freak shows, tattooed people are one of the big draws for those shows at those times. So I was looking at a lot of different tattooed people and taking inspiration from how their tattoos were arranged and a lot of historical tattoos. And then I found a picture of Maud Wagner, who was a 19th century, one of the first female tattoo artists living in New York City, and I just loved this portrait of her. She looked so incredible, and she was kind of like the inspiration for my Flora, in the sense that she not only was tattooed, but she was a tattooist. And Maud's journey was not like Flora's journey. So Maud had a husband who was also a tattooist, so I took that element, but I didn't take their whole story. I don't want people to go away with being like, Maud Wagner was abused. Like, I don't know that. That's not something that I'm putting onto history. I took the inspiration of their lives and then created fictional characters with it. And so I wanted the tattoo parlor to kind of represent the transience of New York City at the time, which was like a huge immigrant population. And the Painted Man is a space for working class people or people on the lower end of the societal spectrum who are either homeless or struggling. There's a lot of transient sailors coming through and coming out, and that's the world in which Flora finds herself. But it's also a world which is like completely run by men. Her world where she's growing up is very masculine and dominated in that way, and it's not just Jordan who's dominating. It's the culture is very deeply masculine and very deeply sort of patriarchal. And then so when she meets Minnie, there's this big kind of change, this different kind of feminist and feminine energy.
Minnie is a fantastic character, but I don't want to go straight into her because there is so much to be said about Minnie. I have so many feelings about Minnie, but I wanted to ask about tattoo parlors because obviously Lydia's already asked you about like your research process, but how different were tattoo parlors like back then? How different was that?
It wasn't. I mean, not as different as you would expect, I think,
Right.
is the key thing. So actually, at the kind of the end of the 1800s, sort of the electrical tattoo machine was coming in, which is very similar to what we have today in terms of the mode of tattooing. The style very much varied in terms of culture. So if you looked at like Japanese tattooing at that time, it would obviously reflect that culture, or Maori tattoos, it would reflect that culture. Where my characters are, it's very what we would call traditional American tattooing, which is very based in symbology. So, they have anchors and swallows and roses and all of these sort of things that we might represent today and think of them as classic tattoos. They were very much what was in vogue at the time when my characters were sort of living and getting tattoos. The big difference, I would think, is that in those now, obviously, tattoos are gender free and like gender queer spaces. Anybody can come in and anybody can get tattoos. Whereas at that time in history, it was very much a masculine or male thing. And women getting tattoos was way more taboo, which is why predominantly in freak shows, the people who you would most want to see if you're a Victorian person in a freak show being tattooed was a woman, because that's the most taboo body on which to see loads of tattoos. So Flora is a bit of an enigma, not just because she does tattooing, but because she's in a female body covered in tattoos, which was kind of against the grain of the expectation for society at the time.
I was really curious about, because obviously back then they didn't have all the kind of sanitary equipment that we do now. So I was really curious about like, would that have made a person ill back then, having tattooing themselves, whether that would have impacted Flora in any way?
I think it's interesting because like sanitation was what it was. Like, we have to think also about the fact that like, yes, there was like less sanitation and more people did die of unsanitary diseases or illnesses or things like that, but also people's immune systems were more adjusted to certain things. And tattooists did try to keep their work clean and
Yeah.
because that was for the benefit of them, not only for the benefit of the person being tattooed. So, but they would just use like alcohol and stuff like that to clean tools and keep tools clean. And I think much like today, it just depends on like the sanitation of the place. I don't think Jordan is like my character Jordan is necessarily most concerned about whether or not his clients are walking out with an infection, but I think it just depended really on the practices of the location.
Now, you touched on earlier about how Flora she's in quite a male-dominated environment at the beginning, and throughout the novel, really, she is mainly surrounded by men, other than Minnie. But this is a book as well that doesn't really shy away from the violence that Flora faces and that the women in the book face, usually by the hands of men. And what I found quite fascinating was that it's something that women will still be able to identify with, unfortunately. Why was this a theme for you in this book? Why did you want to explore kind of this violent side of the world?
I think there's two reasons. The first is whenever I write, I don't tend to write fantasy. What I write is magical realism. So magical realism relies on creating a convincing historical or contemporary world that we would recognize today, or we would recognize from history, and then inserting a magical component or an unreal component into the narrative. So for me, it was important to present that world as it was, and the historical violence against women at that period in history was as it appears in the book, and honestly is not much different from certain places in the world today. I think the second reason is that I always write about sexual violence or sexual assault in one form or another. It's a theme that reoccurs pretty consistently in my work. And it's a feminist issue that I feel very strongly about. So it's something that I am always trying to kind of give voice to. Because it's something that makes survivors feel so voiceless. So it's for me, that's a way of reclaiming something for myself and for other people, and giving us a voice and a moment in narrative fiction where we can feel seen and heard, but also hopefully like there's a way of, I think it's important that we have a trigger warning at the front of the book. I think that's important for safe reading and for people, keeping people safe. Like obviously if there's anybody who is a survivor or is somebody who's going through something where they see a similarity, like I want them to be able to keep themselves safe in whatever their recovery process looks like. But I know from my own experience that there is healing to be found in the fictional encounters of the things that we have struggled with or the things that we have survived. There is growth to be found there and transformation, and it's not always linear or neat or pleasant, but it is possible. So I hope that there's some of that for people when they're reading. It's unpredictable, yes, but I hope it is there.
Absolutely. I think the difficulty is with the sensitivity of it, isn't it? And it's how much do you include, how much do you not include, how much is overt, how much is are you gonna go for it? And I think that sometimes you have to be honest to the people, to your characters. And Jordan is not the type of character that wouldn't be overt, and so it wouldn't feel right to not include the things that he does, because that's who he is as a person.
Yeah, and it's important for the story. Like the other thing is that I'm not including these things because I want to be grotesque or be like rubbing people's face in how horrible this part of history was, or saying, look, these terrible things are happening all over the world and you must pay attention to them. It's important for the narrative that the reader understands where Flora is coming from, because it's so connected to her gift, to the knowing. Like her gift is directly connected to her trauma and her inability to express that pain. So I think that's the important thing when weighing up how much to put in, how much to put out. I always ask myself, like, what's needed for the book, what's needed for the narrative, what's needed for me to tell the best version of this story and the story that I want to tell. So yeah, it's not needless, like you say, and it's true to the characters and it's true to the story.
And on the knowing, I have a quote from the book which I highlighted quite early on because I thought it sort of articulates this supernatural kind of power that Flora has. I thought it articulated it perfectly. So I'm just going to read your own book back to you, Emma Hinds. I hope that's okay.
I will try to be okay with it, yeah.
Okay. As a child, scathing boys used to beat me whenever I spoke of ghosts. I'd learned to turn my eyes away from dark corners where spirits might lurk. The knowing was like having a broken bone that never healed quite right. It twinged. Occasionally the world would slow and the shadows would lengthen. My breath would catch in my windpipe and my heart would lurch, but I would look away. Growing up in 5 Points had knocked the truth into me. There was safety in not knowing. Now, I love that. The knowing was like having a broken bone that never healed quite right. Chef's kiss. Thank you.
Why, thank you.
Obviously, the title of the book is The Knowing. I am very proud of myself for noticing that. But why was it important for Flora's character specifically to have the knowing?
It's funny, isn't it? Because sometimes people ask questions like, why this, why that? And there comes a point when it just boils down to like, this was the story as it came into my head. You know, it was a story that arrived about a girl, and what made me want to tell the story about the girl, well, the girl could talk to ghosts, right? So it has to start somewhere. So it always it started with her gift and her ability, and kind of grew from there. Because as a writer, you have like seeds of ideas that kind of flow, that drift into your head all the time, and some of them take root and some of them don't. And the ones that take root is because there's something interesting that you want to write about, that you're interested on. And that was it for me, is this idea of being able to talk to ghosts and being able to communicate with the dead, and having this mystical strange power. And then as I started to write, I realized how much it was connected to her and her trauma, and everything that she'd gone through was making this power inside of her.
I think as well, just from knowing you, that there are so many different things that are kind of like inextricably linked. So you've so often spoken to me about how it has felt for you being a queer person in church spaces, and how your relationship with God has changed over time, and like how your kind of spiritual connection to God has changed over time. And you know, I know that you're also so fascinated and you love reading books and research about like witches and how women were treated way back when. And I think all of these things are kind of linked in the sense of, you know, spirituality and faith and women and all these different things, and how these things are all kind of like linked. I just think is so interesting. And because I obviously have known you for so long and have heard about, you know, your own experiences, I just think that it's so evidently you that's coming through in these words, if that makes any sense whatsoever.
I think this is, sorry, I think this is definitely, I think Hannah's trying to say that you have a very unique voice, and I think it comes through completely. And I think it is very much solely, this story could have only have come from you.
Yeah, I think there's something about the first book where it's almost accumulation of everything that you've been up to that point, and then you write it and you look back on it and you think, I'm so different now, I'm such a different person. And then you write the next one, and so it is strange, because the knowing in a way kind of represents everything that I was at that point when I was writing it, not necessarily everything I am right now. And so it is strange to be doing like the PR and doing all of the promotion for this book in a sense of a book from a past self in a strange way. And there's something lovely about it, because it's honoring a part of my life that when I was writing it was not without its trauma. And I think a lot of like what I was working through in terms of my own like PTSD and things like that is in the knowing. And so in a way, it's nice to have something that honors that time in a strange way, hopefully in a positive way for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I do feel like there's a positivity in the book. And one of the elements of the book that I really loved that you explored, and you've touched on it a little bit before, was the kind of characters who were labeled as like freaks, or what we see as history would tell us were kind of these people who had physical differences that were kind of then labeled as like these you know, characters that would then be put on display and people would pay to go and see them, you know, Barnum Circus and things like that. What made you want to explore those type of acts specifically, and how hard was it to do with sensitivity? Because obviously we would look at that now in a completely different light to what, you know, a Victorian crowd would.
I don't think the sensitivity of it wasn't hard at all, because I have a chronic illness and I have a disabled partner, so I know how I want to be seen in 100 years or 200 years, and so that helps. In terms of sort of like looking at the characters and the research, they're just such interesting people to look back on, and so many of them were like really awfully taken advantage of by people who ran these shows and did these things, which was why it's important to me to have Minnie be a character who is disabled and has been part of the circus world her whole life, but is now running a circus or running a show, which makes money off people like her. So I wanted that this conflict of, she is a person who deserves to have control over her own life and to be seen as a whole person and a real person, but she's kind of doing it by taking advantage of people like her. And I wanted to have that conflict, because I think it's important that when we look back on people, and when we look back in history, we don't like make everybody neat and shiny, you know, like just because somebody is disabled doesn't mean that they were like a super nice person. I expect that kind of roundedness in representations of like my condition and representations of other conditions, so I wanted it for them too.
Absolutely.
Now, I think it's important that we mention your illustrations in the book, which I say your illustrations, but they are not what you illustrated. They are what your friend Maya illustrated. So let's talk about Maya.
Well, Maya is a friend of mine who I met through fanfic. We're both part of the same fanfic community, and they illustrate a fanfic that I have created, which is accidentally over 1 million words long. Don't ask me how it happened. And so we have this online collaboration, and when I was coming towards maybe my second draft of The Knowing, somebody was like, well, my friend Sam actually said it would be really cool if the tattoos were like visually represented in the book. And then so I started like doodling and getting some mock kind of designs up, and then over the course of my friendship with Maya, I said to them, how do you feel about rendering these for me? I have some rough ones, they're not great. And Maya just took them and ran with them, and they're amazing. I love them so much. I might actually get one eventually, depending on how the book does. I might get one done eventually, if I can find a spot that I like it. But yeah, they're amazing. And we talked a lot about making sure that they really represented the traditional American style of the time. And they're so beautiful, and they suit the book so well. And Maya and I are continuing to collaborate, and Maya is actually in the UK at the moment and will be doing live drawing at our launch event, which is really, really exciting. Yeah,
very exciting. And I just loved that these illustrations are at the top of, am I allowed to say that? It's not a spoiler, is it? The fact that they're at the top of each chapter
headers, basically.
Chapter headers, yes. Yeah. And I think that makes it which is like a more immersive reading experience. Would you say that? I just think it made it even more enjoyable for me. Like, I love visuals, and that was just like a really nice touch. And the illustrations are beautiful, and I know how happy you are with them.
Yeah. So this is a fun question. Did you have a favorite? Because I'm doing a little survey to find out what everybody's favorite was.
Did I have a favorite?
I loved the knife, the pocket knife.
The pocket knife. Okay, that's interesting. That's cool. I really like that one as well.
It's the one that I always think of when we talk about illustrations.
Usually one that people tend to have at the front of their mind when we talk about illustrations, and it's always funny to see which one. So far, like the favorite that has come out on top has been the crane.
Oh, really?
The bird, which was
This
not
one?
No, not the skeleton bird. That I love that one. The
Yeah, I
crane.
do love that one.
But yeah, it's always funny to see like which ones are people's favorites. We're gonna have the one that you were talking about there, Hannah, the winged skeleton bird. We've got stickers of that which are being given out at the launch event next week. So very excited.
Very exciting, and I love the face and the flower.
Oh, see, that's sweet. Not many people have said that one, so that's really nice that you like that one. That's an original Maya Sriracha design.
I loved a lot of them, so it was really hard to think of a favorite just then. But I do know that I really liked the face and the flower.
My favorites have changed over time. It's really funny. It changes with the book. For a long time, the winged bird was my favorite. Then for a while, the oyster was my favorite. This is why it's so hard to choose if I'm going to get one tattooed on my body. I have to have like a permanent favorite.
This is my problem, because I would be obsessed. I'd be like, yeah, I'm going to get the pocket knife 100%. And then like a week later, I'd be like, I want the face and the flower.
Yeah.
I just love it.
I'll have all of them.
I'm very judicious with my tattoos. I have to like really feel like good about them deep for a long, like I know I'll feel good about them for a long time. And I generally choose things that aren't very connected to like a time or a place. So then they can grow and age with me. Whereas these are like connected to this book. So we'll have to see. I think I need to give it some time and let it grow a little bit first.
But they're gonna be special regardless, because it's tattoos that are illustrations that have been illustrated by a friend that you've worked with for a long time, that are the illustrations that are also in your debut novel.
I know.
Like there's no way that like you're gonna pick a wrong one.
I know, but you've got to pick the right one. You've got to pick the right
thing.
one.
Picking the right one. Picking the right one. That's the hard thing.
So finally, because I'm looking at the time and I'm seeing that we've captured, but finally, I would love to ask you a question that I ask a lot of people, but particularly because I'm most interested in what your kind of take of this is, and that's you have a really gorgeous Gothic quality to your writing. What are your literary influences? Who kind of springs to mind?
Yeah. So my earliest literary, so when I was writing as a teenager, is things like the Brontes, so the classic Gothic, Wuthering Heights, Jane Eyre, and then Mary Shelley, Frankenstein, and Angela Carter, The Bloody Chamber, Wise Children. That was all kind of like my teenage years. And then moving into kind of Toni Morrison, Beloved, and then moving on to Sarah Waters, Gothic Queer, St. Pat Barker, and now I love to read Gothic and horror novels. Kirsty Logan, Julia Armfield, who we all love on this podcast.
Yeah, we love Julia.
Yeah, so I think it's something that I always love to read, and I'm starting to come back to read more now, because for a while I was deep in this book, it was really hard to read around that, if that makes sense. When I'm writing something, it's hard to read things that are very, very similar, because you worry a little bit too much about the bleed of voice. So I tend to read things that are very far apart from what I'm writing. So it's nice now that I'm no longer writing this particular Gothic Victorian thing, that I can swing back into like more Gothic stuff. So yeah, it's fun.
I'm also very proud of the fact that I've got you reading so much contemporary fiction, because for so long you've just been attached to your historical goods.
Yeah, well, I think for a long time I was reading so much historical fiction, and part of that was like preparation and research for this book. And also, when you're not writing all the time, if it's not like your full-time gig yet, and you're still working a day job and writing other bits and doing things, sometimes reading certain books can kind of help you stay in the world a little bit more. But now I don't necessarily need that, because writing is my 9 to 5. So reading can be a little bit more of like a wander and a journey to other lands and other places, and exploring different vibes in different times. And yeah, I still love to read historical fiction, but I've also had so much fun with Hannah's recommendations. Have always been great. Yeah.
Thank you. Now, I am obviously so excited for other people to experience your work and the world of the knowing. I'm very, very excited to hear what people think, and already we're seeing so much about it. You are what? Heat Magazine's Book of the Week? Month? Book of the month?
The book of the week.
Book of the week. Sorry.
week.
Okay, fine. Good.
Yeah.
You were also reviewed in the Sunday Times this weekend.
Yes. Best historical fiction for 2024.
And you've been popping up left, right, and centre. You were also in Red Magazine. It's all happening. Very, very exciting. But the most important thing that our listeners can get involved in is they can actually attend your book launch.
They can, yes. Thursday, the 18th of January at Queer Lit, 7:00
in Manchester.
In Manchester, yeah. Queer Lit is such an amazing space. I absolutely love it. They've been so, also I have to say, like, they've been so incredible. So in the time that they've been working and being a bookstore in Manchester, we went in, I think, Hannah, when they had first opened, or they'd recently opened, and I had said, oh, I'm writing a book, and they were so kind, and they were like, yeah, well, you know, if you ever decide to self-publish or you get published, let us know. And then basically from then on, whenever I had an update in my publishing journey, I would go into Queer Lit and say, oh, this has happened, and this has happened, and this has happened. And they were always cheering me on and so excited. And yeah, so it feels really special and really right that we're not only going to be doing my book launch, but they've got this new wonderful space called Social Refuge, Queer Lit Bookshop at Social Refuge in Manchester, which is just amazing for events. And they've started their events calendar for 2024, and I'm so happy to be part of it. So it feels really right that it's like their new space, and we get to talk about my book. And the event is going to be so much fun. There's going to be a tarot card reader there. Yes. I know. So excited. And Maya is going to be there. They're going to be doing some live drawing whilst I am talking. And there will be books. And there will be so many cool people to talk to. And I think it's going to be a really fun night. And tickets are only £5. And they're available from Queer Lit's website and on Eventbrite. So if you just put into Eventbrite, Queer Lit, Emma Hinds, The Knowing, it will pop out the event, or you can look on their Instagram or on my Instagram. And it'd be so much fun to see people there. I'm really, really excited. I've even got an outfit.
Yes. You've got a gorgeous dress, which I'm very excited to see.
I've got an outfit. I'm actually embarrassed to say how much of my mental function has gone into putting together this outfit.
I think it had to be that way.
It's like all of my nervous energy about the book coming out just went straight just into the outfit. Yeah, it was like the outfit must be right. But yeah, it's gonna be really good, and some wonderful people are coming up from Bedford Square in London, my amazing publishing house. So yeah, it's gonna be a really fun night. It's gonna be so exciting.
Emma Hinds, thank you for returning. I just love saying the full name. It's so fun. Emma Hinds, thank you so much for returning to a pair of bookends. Before you leave us, please, can you give us some recommendations?
Yeah, I'm cheating ever so slightly here because I'm using my recommendations from 2023.
Unbelievable.
Which is like, I did my roundup for the year, prompted by Hannah McDonald, who basically on the 1st of January went, you've not done your roundup of books for the year. I'm waiting for it. And I was like, oh God, I must do it.
Give the people what they want.
Okay. Well, I have them in like genre things. So my favorite historical fiction, Lauren Groff, The Matrix, mystical lesbian nuns, gotta be done. Favorite contemporary fiction of last year, Small Worlds, by Caleb Azuma Nelson, which Hannah, and I'm sure you're both all over this. You must have been over this.
Haven't read it yet, but I told you to read Open Water.
Yeah, Lydia, you will love it. You will absolutely love it. It's amazing. Favorite horror fiction, Things Have Gotten Worse Since Last We Spoke, by Eric LaRocca, which is 3 shortish stories in one book. Really, really disgusting, but amazing.
Yeah, they're like grotesque. It's brilliant.
They are so grotesque. Favorite translated fiction, Strange Weather in Tokyo by Hiromi Kawakami, translated by Alison Markin Powell, which is just beautiful writing. And an epic example of like Japanese fiction done so beautifully. Favorite fantasy fiction: Morgan Is My Name by Sophie Keach, who happens to be my friend. Sophie is my buddy, and Morgan Is My Name is the first in a trilogy of an epic retelling of the Morgan Le Fay myth. So if you were there for Circe by Madeline Miller, if you were there for all of the other myth retellings, you need to be there for this British myth retelling of Morgan Is My Name. It's really good, and it's the first in a series, so you know what's not to love about that. What else is on my list?
And Emma
favorite
also, whoa, you're not getting away with that. Emma in Waterstones the other day changed round books so that Morgan Is My Name was facing out because she was not happy.
I do that for all my friends. I do that for all my friends. Favorite short fiction: Hex by Rebecca Denniston Knight. As probably my favorite read of the year. It's really small and it just packs an absolute wallop, and it's very uncanny, and the main character is supremely unlikable. And actually, Lydia, if you liked Saltburn, this is like better, but
fab.
It's so good.
This is what Saltburn could have been.
Yeah. Favorite nonfiction: A Memoir of My Former Self by Hilary Mantel, which obviously meant a lot to me, having lost Hilary. But yes, it's beautiful and lovely. For anyone who is missing Hilary, as I am missing, then it is a beautiful way to hear her voice again.
Those are so many beautiful recommendations, Emma. Thank you so much. And where can our listeners find you on social media?
If you want to find me on social media, I
don't
blame you if you don't want to. I'm Elf Reads on Instagram, ELPH Reads. I can't remember my Twitter handle.
You are at Emma Louise PH, I think. But I will link those in the show notes. Thank you. I'm your personal PR pocket person.
I'm really bad at, I can do Instagram. I'm on it. I'm on Instagram, but I find I'm really bad at Twitter or X or whatever.
Twitter's chaos. No. Let's not do that. But for everyone, please go pre-order your copy of The Knowing. You can get signed copies from Queer Lit, which I will be linking in the show notes. They can also get signed copies from the Queer London bookshop that I can't remember the name of.
From Common Press.
Common Press, excellent. And you can order other copy. You can order a general copy of The Knowing from any other bookshop. But why would you not want a signed copy?
Why would you not? Yeah, exactly. And if you come to the event, you can get one signed in person.
Yay! Do that.
I'll even write a nice message on it.
That's very kind. I will pop a link to tickets for your launch in the show notes, the 18th of January at Queer Lit in Manchester. Please go give Emma a follow. Please go order a book, ASAP Rocky, and read it and let us know what you think. You can tag us. Well, tag Emma in your reviews, but please tag us if you enjoyed this episode. You can find us at A Pair of Bookends Pod on Instagram and at A Pair of Bookends on Twitter and TikTok. And as always, if you enjoy the episodes, please don't forget to rate, review and subscribe, as it helps to boost us in the charts so more of you can find us. Please, thank you so much for listening, and Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year.
Thank you, Emma.